Hello, everybody. Today we have a duel between two very good players. Up here in the top left, FN, the blue arm commander, and here in the bottom right, Krogoth, the orange core commander. And this is on a map called Dragonis 2, which I have not casted before. But just from an initial observation, it looks as though there are metal spots galore, all the metal you could possibly want in the world. Certainly, this map is not lacking in mineral deposits for the players to take advantage of. So, yeah, I don't know much about this map, and I haven't watched this replay, so I don't know who wins. I just know that what we're about to witness is most certainly going to be an epic game between two very skilled players on a map that I've never casted before, but certainly that looks to be the type of battleground that could lead to quite interesting and dynamic conflict. Now, this map is interesting because it's mostly flat, but then you do have these little nodes that are popping up out of the ground. They are worth about 750 energy apiece. And this will make it so that K-bots are much better than they would otherwise be. For example, if we were on just like a flat moon map with no obstacles, vehicles are typically they rule the battleground. But on a map like this with all kinds of terrain obstacles in the way, K-bots tend to do better because K-bots can maneuver much more effectively. They can kind of start and stop. They can pivot. They can turn on a dime, and they are much better for maneuvering in these more difficult terrain scenarios than are vehicles. But given the size of the map, vehicles are also good for different reasons because they can get across this somewhat large map more quickly, perhaps. But I do expect to see K-bots because, again, this map does favor them in this scenario, and so we will just have to see how the players want to choose their technology to take full advantage of this particular scenario. So as I say that, FN sending down a couple peewees. It's the essentially the ARM scouting / raiding K-bot, and he will be met by Krogoth's AKs, which is essentially the core equivalent to the ARM peewee. And so yes, FN sending down quite a squad of peewees. It looks to be about a dozen, with a radar bot in the front to give himself some advanced scouting, to give himself a warning, and to perhaps avoid these AKs if he can. Now, these players, they do kind of make it look easy, but I can promise you that in the middle of a game, when you're trying to micro 100 things at once and expand your economy, this construction K-bot, he ends up reclaiming that peewee, so very well done there by Krogoth. I thought that that construction K-bot was dead for sure. But yeah, Krogoth on the ball there, reclaiming that peewee just in the nick of time to save itself. But as I was saying, it is much more difficult to defend these raids than you might think just by watching these players. They make it look easy, but it is certainly not easy, especially on a map like this with many different angles of approach. It is quite difficult to defend your base from this constant raiding aggression that FN is applying here onto his opponent. But yeah, these are skilled players, and they are quite adept, I'd say, in these scenarios. So yeah, Krogoth going to do a good job here of pushing his opponent back and keeping his base intact, while attempting perhaps some raiding of his own. Here we have a couple peewees in the top of Krogoth's base. And they're going to try to sneak around. Will Krogoth notice in time? This is what I'm talking about. This is very hard to react to. Just 1 or 2 seconds of a delay. If you don't notice in time, those 2 peewees can get right into your base and cripple your economy in a very devastating way. So, yeah, Krogoth definitely on top of this defense. But also, FN on top of his defense because it doesn't seem like Krogoth has gotten much of anything done so far. Certainly, FN has been the aggressor this game. He has been on his opponent's side of the map, much more so, I'd say, than Krogoth has. Krogoth feels like been on the defensive most of the time. But Krogoth now sending forth some AKs into the middle. But these are most likely going to run into this veritable army of flashes. And as we know, flashes are quite effective against AKs. They just, pound for pound, are much stronger. They have more health and they do more damage. And they're faster too, so these flashes are going to have no trouble picking off these AKs, I think. And once again, FN taking the kind of aggressive role this game, doing a much better job of keeping his opponent under pressure and keeping his opponent on his toes than is Krogoth. But Krogoth also now building light laser towers, and these are going to exponentially help him defend this constant wave of aggression of flashes. Light laser towers are good against flashes if you can, especially if you can spread them out as he has here. You can see, he's got them relatively spread. They're I guess we're calling them LLT spikes, and these make it much harder to take them all out. As opposed to if all the LLTs were just in a line. This one flash getting through, very annoying. He might be able to kill this metal extractor. Kills 1, almost kills 2. But here at the top, Krogoth looking to do a bit of a cheeky run by here, but I don't know how effective that's going to be. FN already preparing with some light laser towers, and in the meantime kind of doing a breakthrough. The Battle of the Bulge, if you will, straight into Krogoth's base, just running right through the middle of his defenses and production, running past everything really and trying to get some damage done. But how effective will this really be? In some cases, as a player, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of just throwing metal at your opponent. These flashes will eventually be cleaned up, and then it will be Krogoth's turn to reclaim those metal corpses and perhaps bolster his army even more. So we'll have to see if this attack was worth it. He is still taking out metal extractors here in the back. And again, FN being the aggressor the whole game, now transitioning into more of a mid-game force. Stumpies and warriors, kind of the next step up, the natural evolution of peewees and flashes. These are more expensive, but much more durable and sturdy forces. So these will be much harder to deal with than were those flashes. But for whatever reason, it seems like these things aren't even firing. For a second they weren't. It was almost like they were on hold fire there, and I don't know what that was all about. Certainly he wants his units to be firing here if he would like to win these battles. Warriors will take quite a bit more punishment than will flashes from these light laser towers. And as you can see, this force of FN's really going to get some work done. I think they're going to get much deeper into the base probably than flashes alone could. So very annoying, and this is a really interesting scenario because both players just kind of sending an endless wave at one another. I really kind of think Krogoth should be keeping his AKs back at the base and defending against this. They're not really doing much here in the middle. And FN really keeping this relentless pressure on his opponent. Krogoth feels like he might be crumbling under it. But in the meantime, Krogoth is finally going to take this large group of AKs and attempt this raid. But again, FN was just ready for that. He's got way too much defense. So again, FN certainly the aggressor of this game. FN certainly the one that is kind of in the commander's seat. He's in the chair, if you will, this game. He is kind of controlling the pace of the battle. But that doesn't mean that Krogoth is out. And FN also building a squadron of Thunders here. And a bombing run is certainly imminent. But, you know, in spite of the fact that Krogoth has been raided this entire time, he is almost completely even on metal. Amazingly, I don't even know how he did it. I think it's just that he's been constantly expanding. Even as he takes constant harassment from his opponent, he continues to expand his base in the areas that he's not getting harassed. So, yeah, this is the mark of a good player. They, even when they're under relentless pressure, they do not allow it to stifle their expansion. They do not allow it to make them fall behind. And Krogoth continuing to push out onto the map despite the fact that he has been under a wave of attacks from essentially the first minute of the game. FN has just been absolutely relentless, and Krogoth, long hair, don't care. He is going to persist in spite of that, and he is going to continue to push out onto the map and claim his territory. Amazingly, I mean, again, just the amount of pressure FN has been putting on this whole game has been quite impressive and scary to watch. But Krogoth, not to be dissuaded, not to be defeated by such petty spam tactics. That's what we do call it when an opponent just builds a endless army of T1 units. That is called spam. And so FN certainly on the spam strategy today. He's going to continue to throw armies. All right, here we go. This bombing run, it's been brewing for a good 5-10 minutes at least. Finally coming in. But the question is, what does FN want to get done? Krogoth at least somewhat prepared. He's got a line of defenders here to push this back, but he doesn't have much up here at the top, and I think FN knows it. I think FN kind of realizing that his northern base is not as well defended against air, but he does fly back in range of those missile towers, and he will continue to lose Thunders if he flies into range of those defenders, but this whole northern part of his base virtually undefended, and these bombers should be able to fly around with near impunity and just kind of drop their payload on anything and everything. Really anything that pokes its head out onto the map, these bombers should have no problem picking up. Man, this would be a juicy target. It's certainly the best target on this area of his of Krogoth's base, and there are no defenders. But he probably just doesn't know about it. Chances are FN not aware of this advanced K-Bot lab, and if he were aware of it, I am quite positive that he would commit that bombing force, that bombing fleet, straight into his opponent's advanced K-Bot lab and put him behind on technology. So, yeah, the only thing kind of saving Krogoth here is ignorance. It's a lack of intel. Knowing is half the battle. That is certainly true in war, and it is true in escalation. The more you know, the better off you will be. Certainly, if FN knew about this advanced K-Bot lab, it would already be dead. Will he see it? Will he see it? He's going to fly a bomber close to it. It's close. Did he see it? Did he see it? He's turning around now. He's going to take out this this very weak attempt. Oh, I think he might know now. Does he know? Oh god, he's so close. Oh, he's so close. He is just right out of vision range of that thing. Maybe he doesn't know about it, but my god, like a stray bomber could just fly into it. Is he paying attention? He's got to see these cans now, so he's got to be aware that something's going on. Ah, now he should see it. Now he knows. And that advanced K-Bot lab most certainly dead. So it did take him a while. It was a long road, but ultimately that advanced K-Bot lab couldn't hide forever, and there's just not enough air defense on this part of the map to stop this endless bombing raid from FN. You know, FN really showing his skill here. It's kind of hard to explain, but he applied so much pressure throughout the game on this endless T1 ground spam that it forced Krogoth to invest all of his resources into ground-based defenses like these light laser towers, these GAT guns, and plenty of units to try to hold back the endless tide. And because of that, Krogoth was forced to skimp on his anti-air defenses because he just didn't have the resources or the manpower to really mount an effective air defense. And so FN now taking advantage of that with his bombing runs, so really putting Krogoth into kind of an impossible situation where damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, certainly Krogoth couldn't have known that he was going to be bombed. Typically, in these scenarios, you know, you build anti-air defense just proactively, just in case your opponent does decide to go the aerial route. But you know, Krogoth just not really having the emotional, mental, or material resources to defend against an air attack at that moment. And that was in large part due to FN's relentless pressure all throughout this game. I quite strongly believe that if FN had not applied all of that constant pressure from almost the first minute of the game, Krogoth would have been much more prepared for this bombing run and this bombing campaign that worked so effectively and continues to be a nuisance. In fact, nuisance is probably understating it. It's more than a nuisance. It's a real problem. This is a big, big problem. These cans, yeah, they're just kind of food for these bombers. Cans very strong, and were they to make it to FN's doorstep, they might get quite a bit accomplished, but these bombers, just a constant thorn in Krogoth's side. He just has no answer to these bombers right now, and again, this constant harassment, this constant pressure, keeping Krogoth in a state of perpetual misery, and making it difficult to react to everything that is going on. This is kind of the mark of a very experienced player in escalation. They will effectively combine land and air tactics to put this dual pressure on their opponents to make it extremely difficult to counter both threats at once. And if there's water, then they'll sometimes also apply sea pressure as well. It's the trifecta of kind of unstoppable pressure. And yeah, FN certainly showing us here the effectiveness of attacking from multiple angles, utilizing all forms of technology, and diversifying your tactics to make your opponent a total nutcase trying to defend you. I mean, obviously, we're pathologizing Krogoth here. We don't know that he's, in a nutcase. I just know that putting myself in his shoes, I would certainly feel like a nutcase trying to defend all of these different attacks coming from seemingly every different angle. Very frustrating. But, again, in spite of that, Krogoth ahead on metal. He is just, Krogoth's motto here is resilience. He has just been so resilient despite the fact that FN has continued to apply pressure. Krogoth has not been dissuaded. He continues to take over the map. And he is like a virus. He's like COVID. And just no matter how many countermeasures you throw at him, he just continues to expand. There is no stopping him. I haven't watched this replay, but I do know, just based on the TADA, the TA demo archive, which I downloaded this replay from, you can kind of look at the units built on the website. You can get an overview of the game, and I believe that Krogoth ends up building nearly 100 construction K-bots. So that's a good explanation of how. I mean, when I'm looking at that, I'm like, who the hell needs 100 construction K-bots? Like in what universe do you need 100 construction K-bots? Some games, a player might just build one, right? Like you might just build one to get to the technology to get to T2, and then never build one again. Here we go, another bombing run on these GATs. FN just trying to stop the plague here, just desperately, I feel like, attempting to contain Krogoth's endless, ridiculous expansion all over the map. And these bombers continuing to apply that endless pressure. But it does look like Krogoth more prepared this time. He's got some slashers out now, the T1 anti-air missile truck. And he's got some more defenders, pulverizers, kind of littering the map here. This is a really, really good game. It's like so back and forth, and Krogoth just absolutely refusing to fall behind, regardless of how much pressure is put on him. He is microing his little heart out. But again, as I was saying before, by the end of this game, I think he builds 100 construction K-bots. 100. So that explains how he's able to just keep expanding. He just has so many builders, and no matter how many builders he loses, he's just got 5 more to replace it. And so I think that explains how he can just continue to expand out all over this map, despite the fact that, just look at this. Look at this. Look at this. How many... everywhere. So many construction K-bots. This is how you do it, guys. This is how you play a map like this. You just want to have so much build power that your opponent can't. They literally cannot kill you fast enough. You are just like a virus. Very unique playstyle by Krogoth. I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Typically, the best players are more in FN's position where they're applying that relentless pressure. They're not typically in the resilient kind capacity that Krogoth is in. You know, Krogoth really hasn't applied much pressure at all this whole game, but he's just been like a wall that, you know, this FN's tides continue to crash into, and Krogoth refusing to relent, refusing to really fall behind or concede. As I said before, it feels like just the emotional toll that it would take to be under this kind of threat for, let's see how long we've been playing, 35 minutes straight. I think most players would just crumble under that. You know, never mind the physical reality of having an endless stream of units just continue to walk into your base and cause immense damage. But the psychological component, you know, the psychological toll that it would take to just be under this much pressure and continue to thrive. That's impressive. It's really impressive, and you know, Krogoth finally starting to fall behind. That's not unexpected. FN about 20 metal ahead of him, but I think that's because Krogoth really has not upgraded any of his metal extractors yet, and that's just because he just, I think, he's had so much pressure on him that he hasn't really had the opportunity to upgrade his metal yet. But as I say that, his opponent hasn't really either, but his opponent is instead building these Moho metal makers. Each one of these will give you 12 metal. So this is 36 right here. So this is 36 extra metal those Moho metal makers are creating for FN. So he is going to have a very significant, about say about 20 right now metal more per second, because just because he's on that T2 technology, T2 economy, and Krogoth still struggling to upgrade his economy to a T2 quality. So yeah, we have to see though. I mean, the thing is, Krogoth can't really. He's got to have a game plan to win. Like right now, Krogoth just kind of playing not to lose. You know, he's certainly doing a decent job of defending and being resilient, but he needs to play to win. You know, he needs a strategy to defeat his opponent. It's not enough just to survive. You really have to. You have to play to win. You have to have some kind of game plan, some kind of end goal. And I don't see exactly what his plan is at this point. He's building a lot of cans. And cans pretty good against this composition of FNs, which is mostly warriors and some mavericks and some stumpies. But FN having these ambushers near the front. Ambushers are ambushers are much stronger than actually they're the original TA version. The OTA version of ambushers was already strong, but in escalation they are an order of magnitude even stronger than that. They shoot these volleys of 3 massive plasma shells, and they explode in a huge AoE, and they're especially good against T1 spam. So, yeah, the truth is, FN kind of slowly creeping towards Krogoth's base with these static emplacements, which eventually, if he gets too close, will begin hammering Krogoth's base, and at that point, it's probably a bit of a chokehold submission, you know, aka Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or mixed martial arts if you're into that. Krogoth really just cannot allow FN to slowly creep forward with these ambushers, which he's doing. If these ambushers get too close to the base, I think that's just going to be too hard to come back from. But again, Krogoth doing a very valiant job here of holding back his opponent. But FN still flying around out here, skirting along the edges of Krogoth's base with these bombers and looking for a golden opportunity to get some work done. You know, he could target this. What else? He could target this. The thing is, Krogoth's base is so decentralized at this point that there's it's hard to deal this kind of crippling blow with one bombing run. Maybe that's just the strength of Krogoth as a player. He kind of plays like an AI. If you ever played against the AI in games like this, they kind of build their base willy-nilly all over the place, and because of that, it's tough to just defeat your opponent in one fell swoop, like in one nuke. Certainly, you can usually nuke a player and win instantly because, you know, they kind of centralize their base, but the AI just builds kind of all over the place in a more decentralized fashion. So it becomes... So, for example, look at FN's base, right? Like, a bombing run on this, or the Moho Metal Makers, or the Fusions would be devastating, right? Because his base is a more centralized, like, pretty much all within this one screen is the meat of his base, right? Like, the most valuable buildings and structures he has are all on this screen. So if Krogoth was making bombers, and I think he should be because FN has almost no air defense. He has a few defenders, but that wouldn't be enough to stop a dedicated bombing run. And yeah, FN having a much more centralized kind of base, and this centralized base would be much easier to bomb into the Stone Age than Krogoth's spread out all over the universe base. But yeah, FN finally making headway into Krogoth's base. He's finally getting this group of Mavericks and Flashes into a vulnerable part. But as I say that, Krogoth also kind of making it into FN's base with this huge, tanky, and sort of unstoppable army of cans. And they're almost certainly going to get this fusion. That explosion's probably going to take out quite a few of FN's army and allow Krogoth to continue pushing down and take out more fusions. Those are going to blow up. Wow, unbelievable. These cans, this group of about a dozen cans or so, might just win the game on their own. Cans very slow, but also very, very damn hard to kill. They kind of they epitomize Core's balance philosophy or design philosophy, which is just the think of it as like the Empire from the Star Wars universe. It's just this slow, inevitable death march of tanky, hard to kill, and you know, damage efficient units. They will continuously steamroll into your base and inflict so much damage and be so hard to kill that by the time you do finish them off, they have already inflicted so much damage that you simply cannot come back from it. So yeah, I have to say, FN not really reacting to these cans very well. ARM has counters, but Mavericks are not the counters to cans. Cans certainly, I'd say, cost efficient against Mavericks. There are certainly good counters to cans, but FN not really building them, so FN could be building Fidos. Fidos outrange the cans, I believe, and he can kind of kite them. Or he could build shooters. Shooters are the kind of arm long-range sniper K-bot. And they're specifically designed to counter units like cans at a long range. So his composition, I just don't think FN really expected this many cans. I don't think he really planned for it or expected this level of resistance or aggression from his opponent, Krogoth, who admittedly has been on the back foot the whole game, but FN really not reacting to these cans properly. You need... you just cannot face tank cans. You really cannot just have direct engagements with cans. That's not how this works. Cans are like almost melee brawlers. You don't want to get into their firing range. You want to stay away from them and take advantage of their slow speed and shorter range, and just try to pick them apart with longer range units, or bombers are good, air units are fine. Brawlers would be better, gunships would be better than bombers against cans. But unbelievable, yeah, kind of unbelievable. FN certainly could have countered these cans better. He certainly could have built Fidos or shooters. He had the energy. He had 4 fusions, and he has, 5 advanced energy storages. He certainly had the resources to build shooters, which have a energy cost per shot. But I don't think that would have been an issue. But yeah, FN really just not reacting properly to Krogoth's assault here, and cans just have so much health that even the bomber is going to have a hard time chewing through that really tough armor. Zeus is really not a great counter either, because cans are just they're just going to win in a confrontation with Zeus's. Cans are going to be much more effective. So yeah, FN really not reacting properly to Krogoth's army composition, which is kind of sad, because all Krogoth is really building are cans, so it's not like he's building some complex diversity of force. I mean, if your opponent's only building one thing, ideally you would just counter, you know what I'm saying? It'd be different if, Krogoth was building like 3 or 4 different units, but he's only building cans, and he took out 4 fusions in that one raid, but it doesn't look like FN has rebuilt them. Yeah. Despite him taking out 4 fusions, this game is still really even in terms of economy. Surprisingly, Krogoth ahead, I think. Yeah, Krogoth has more metal. Just looking at the surface area of the map, you can see that Krogoth has more of the map, but FN still holding the middle, and it's kind of like a chess game. Holding the middle does give you a huge advantage because, well, for example, you can build a repulsor, you can build a tactical nuke, and this will, let me see, this will hit all of his opponent's base, so FN can nuke Krogoth with impunity. I highly doubt that Krogoth has an anti-nuke set up. So yeah, I'd still say it's pretty close because Krogoth having more metal, but FN having the positional advantage. And it really depends on how the players, and also FN still having air control. Krogoth, I don't even think has built air this entire game, which is kind of amazing to think about, to be 50 minutes into the game and to not have built an air factory that I've seen is unheard of. He's just let FN have air control, and FN, he has been, utilizing it to some degree. He's definitely been keeping his bombers busy, but could he have gone to T2? I really think if FN had gone to T2 air and built some brawlers, it would be a different game right now. Those brawlers, I think, would have been a great counter to the cans. Krogoth not even attempting to get air control at all. It just would have been a shooting gallery for those brawlers, and much better counter to cans than our Thunders, because the Thunders not the most accurate against moving targets, even slow moving targets. So yeah, certainly FN, it feels like, should have probably taken more advantage of his air control. But at this point, FN in a little bit of trouble because he's now behind on energy. Losing those 4 fusions definitely put him behind. If you look at the bottom left of the map here of the screen, you can see his energy is at 0. He has no energy right now. So yeah, losing those 4 fusions in that can attack definitely hurting, and he is still to this day not rebuilt any of those fusions. So that was kind of a permanent economic blow to him. And he is now moving forward, though, or moving to the east side with this army of Zeus and some Stumpies and some Flashes. But there's just so many Gats. There's just so much defense. Again, Krogoth, I'd say, of any player I have ever watched, plays more like an AI. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's a really unique play style. He's got... The AI just kind of builds defenses all over the place, right? Like, players will typically build, like, a defensive line on the front, like where they think the enemy's going to attack. And so, they blockade a certain area so that you can't even get into their base. But the AI doesn't do that. The AI just builds defense everywhere so that, like, it's not as efficient, but it's also, like, a pain to deal with, because then once you get into their base, you're getting hit by, lasers and plasma shells from all over the place, and it's really hard to deal with. So, yeah, Krogoth really taking a page out of that book and just building defenses all over his base, really, in kind of a haphazard fashion. Yeah, which is, it's giving FN a hell of a time. And FN also, surprisingly, not really taking back over this northern part of the map. I definitely think he should be expanding out. And also not... I haven't seen him rebuild his fusions. So, yeah, FN in a really weird place here, because it feels like he's stagnating. He's not really upgrading his metal extractors. I don't see a single moho anywhere. He hasn't rebuilt those fusions. He's not taking the map back over. He is finally rebuilding a fusion, and he's got a couple mohos here at the front. But it just kind of feels like FN is emotionally exhausted at this point. Certainly, it's understandable. This game has now dragged on for 53 minutes, and both players have to be feeling the burn here. And but Krogoth, again, this extremely resilient force that just seems to be undeterrable. He just feels like... It just kind of feels like no matter how much pressure you put on him, he just bounces back. He's like a rubber band, or a... What's the... He's like a bungee cord. And the more you pull him, the more pressure you put, the harder he snaps back at you. And he almost kind of has 3 bases here, right? This kind of northern base, this starting base, and then this southwestern base. And but his opponent's still having the middle. And the middle does give you a positional advantage. But yeah, this game is still pretty close, guys. I mean, even though Krogoth does feel like he might be ahead, FN still has this tactical nuke. And I don't know if he's used it yet. But again, Krogoth having a decent counter to the tactical nuke just by having his base so spread out. There's really not like a great target. You know, where most players would have one juicy economic fortress that the repulsor could target and more or less win the game. Krogoth not really not really creating any great opportunities for a tactical nuke. I mean, certainly he could take out a bunch of take out some K-bot labs, or take out some defenses, but this might be an okay target, but it probably wouldn't kill these K-bot labs in one missile. He might have to use multiple shots to kill those 3 K-bot labs. And just look at this line of defense. Yeah, FN gonna walk into that and be like, yeah, I don't think so. Here comes this repulsor nuke. Boom, he's gonna take out that line of defense there. He's gonna get that Punisher to about half health. This GAT is pretty much one hit. Yeah, just using that tactical nuke to create a hole to try to push through. But, again, Krogoth has defense all around his base, so it's not just the front line. He's got it, kind of scattered throughout his production as well. And so it just kind of feels like an endless gauntlet to try to push through. I mean, just look at all these green lasers. Such an impressive defense there. And in the meantime, Krogoth going to attack from 2 angles here. He's coming in from the south with a group of about 10 cans, and from the east with a group of about, it's hard to even count, 25, 30 cans and some Mantis for anti-air. Great job there, because we know FN has had aerial control this whole game, so he's going to bring those bombers for sure. And really, this southern attack, I think, is more of a distraction. He's going to keep FN's army busy, even though he won't get much accomplished. It will buy him time to let these slow-moving cans in the north bear down on FN's base and inflict an absolute catastrophe. And if he can take out these advanced energy storages and Moho metal makers, it is almost certainly over, because he will inflict such economic devastation on his opponent that I don't think FN will be able to recover. So, but in the meantime, FN's attack here, this push through the middle, was ultimately very successful. He did ultimately break through that kind of gauntlet of defenses. But again, the problem is Krogoth's base is so decentralized that there's no one area that he can attack that will just end the game for Krogoth. And I don't really think the same can be said for FN. If he takes out the economy here, if he takes out these advanced energy storages and takes out this advanced K-bot lab, I don't see how FN is going to do this. Because what's going to happen is that FN is going to kind of be surrounded then, right? He's only going to have this middle base, and Krogoth might just close in on him from all sides. This many cans is hard to deal with. In general, like, regardless of what you have, this many cans is, well, that is a scary number of cans. It doesn't really matter at some point. There's just so many. Again, this is kind of a Core's philosophy, you could say. At some point, they just reach this critical mass of death, such an unstoppable force, such a critical mass of units that the opponent just crumbles under the weight of the Empire. And this many cans is just, it's hard to deal with, you know. I mean, even if he did have the right counters, which he doesn't, I mean, and FN hasn't really built the counters to cans all game. He hasn't built a single shooter, and those would be perfect. He has built a couple Fidos, but not the number of Fidos that you would really want. Like, talking about like hundreds of Fidos you would probably need, you know. To deal with this many cans, you would need an army of Fidos. But, yeah, overall, very impressive play from both players. But Krogoth, just that immovable object, you know, that wall that cannot be destroyed. You know, just pushing back wave after wave and being undeterred by everything that FN threw at him. Very unique playstyle. I don't think we've really seen it that much in the games I've casted here. FN going to do kind of a one last hurrah, I think. Going to do one last little bombing run. But ultimately, like I said, Krogoth closing in on all sides. This middle base is... it's all but demolished, and yeah, FN realizing the end is near, he's going to GG out. But really, really great game between both players. It lasted for about an hour, over an hour. So we weren't just seeing, you know, it wasn't just a battle of physical, you know, the material conditions on the ground, but also you could see the psychological stress being put on both players. I think as the game dragged on, you could certainly see the toll. You know, FN certainly could have probably expanded over the map, but as I said, both players I think kind of struggling to keep it together after a certain amount of time, and a battle of wills there, and Krogoth really the champion of that. Very great. Outstanding play from both players, and really cool game to watch. One other thing I want to say too is, this is one thing I really enjoy about Escalation, is that there's so many different strategies. There's so many different, you know, I guess ways to skin a cat, or, you know, methods to cut the pie, or whatever alliteration you want to use. That would have been a great game potentially to go to T3. In other games like similar to this, players have gone to T3 because it's, you know, it's a larger map and there's a ton of resources. But both players can tend to stay on T2 and just continue to send waves of you know, T2 armies at one another. We didn't see any T2 air, but that was another option. Either player could have gone to T2 air and claimed air dominance, or you know, built those gunships that could have had a massive like impact on the game. So many different like strategies, and like obviously in each game like the players can only choose so many, but really cool just to see this kind of what kind of turned out to be just a T2 ground battle, both players just spamming T2 at each other. And you know, of course FN did have some bombers, but ultimately it came down to those cans. I mean, Krogoth building cans, and it worked, you know. FN just not really building the correct counters, and the cans just eventually applying so much pressure that FN crumbled. So great game, and I hope you enjoyed it.